It's amazing to see the buzz at this conference. Everyone in this room knows how important data and AI are to these industries, but the fact that 2 of the customers speaking on stage today were from manufacturing, transportation, and energy is just a sign of how important these industries are in our space and vice versa. So we're super excited to have you. Today we're going to have, we have a packed agenda, some amazing content. Shiv, Trisal, who's our go-to-market leader for manufacturing, transportation, and energy, say that 15 times fast, is going to start out with some awards and a Databricks keynote. And then we're going to hear from 4 amazing customers, Aman from Petronas, Sai, who is on stage today from JetBlue, amazing job, Sai, Seth from Collins Aerospace, and Bart from Corning are all going to do lightning talks for us on various use cases and how they think about data within their organization. And then after that, the 4 of them will do a panel with Shiv, and we'll end that with a happy hour right down the hall to all celebrate the end of another great day at Data and AI Summit. So to kick it off, I will pass it over to Shiv, who's going to get us started.
Maybe, yes. Yeah, there we go. Thank you so much. All right, so my name is Shiv Trisal. As Sam said, I'm going to say manufacturing, transportation, and energy one more time. So I head up our industry team for these 3 very important industries. As you all know, there's a lot of data that comes out of these industries, and we'll learn a little bit about what some of the leading companies are doing in this space. So I'm very excited to have everybody here. So first, some data team awards. This is something that we do to recognize customers that are doing exemplary things in the industry using data analytics and AI. And I wanted to first recognize some nominees. A lot of these customers, quite frankly, it was a very hard job to pick winners because each of them are winners in each of these categories. So Blue Conduit, Generac, Inari, JetBlue, and Total Energies, Rivian. I don't know if these customers are in the audience, but I wanted to recognize the cool things that they are doing, and as a result, these data team awards they were nominated for. So fantastic work for all of these amazing customers in the industry. And obviously, I wanted to recognize Sai and JetBlue team, which you heard from this morning, for being actually the winners of our Data Disruptor Awards. So congratulations, Sai and team. All right, so overall, our overall industry winner for this year for Data Team Awards for manufacturing, automotive, transportation, energy, all of these verticals combined is Mercedes-Benz. Congratulations to the Mercedes-Benz team. So what can I say? If I had to simplify the kind of things that Mercedes-Benz is doing using the Lakehouse platform and with the help of Databricks technologies is really solving for the biggest issue in electric vehicle ownership. Can anybody guess what that is? Range anxiety. So the biggest thing is how the hell do you make sure that you deliver a great experience to vehicle owners and drivers, making sure that they understand where the nearest charging stations are, how do they best make their routes most optimal to get to the destinations that they're trying to get to. And this is something that they use every day of the year, every hour of the day, and really make things happen for the end customer that's driving the vehicle and make that experience really, really pleasurable. So congratulations once again to the Mercedes-Benz team for doing fantastic things with the platform. Thank you. So a couple of things I wanted to begin with. So I'll kick us off and share some thoughts and key trends that I'm seeing in the industry. I spend a lot of time with our customers in the industry. I come from industry. So this is a very unique point of view that I feel I'm very privileged to have, working with over 9,000 customers who are doing amazing things with data analytics and AI and having the front row seat to that. I think that's something that's really, really cool. So I'm going to be sharing some observations on what I'm hearing. And truly, the theme of this conference is Generation AI. And the roots of enterprise digital transformation really lie in the web era, right? So we went through multiple phases here, which is web, then mobile, and cloud. And this era of AI really builds on those previous generations of technology advancements that have really shaped our lives as consumers, and then went on to lead a step change in how businesses are run. And speaking of shaping our lives, I'm sure back in November when ChatGPT first came out, I'm sure you guys played around with it. Obviously, we have our own version of that in Dolly. But to me, what generative AI really represents, what excites me about it, is the impact, the step change it will have, and the value that it will create in the physical sectors of our economy, which is manufacturing, transportation, and energy. So generative AI, I personally feel there's only one thing that you all need to remember to summarize everything. I know there's a lot of noise around this topic. For me, what it really means is it's welcome to the era of higher expectations. And what I mean by that is user expectations have just been elevated forever, right? So people using ChatGPT, they don't want to go back to anything else, right? So that genie is not going back in the bottle anymore. So that's going to be critical across the board. Now, it doesn't matter where those users are. You got to meet those users where they are at. And this is a trend that's consistent across customers, your suppliers, your business partners, your employees. That trend is not going to reverse itself. The second thing is data will keep getting more and more complex, right? So if you look at our industry, the amount of unstructured data that's in there, whether it's telemetry data, whether it is natural language data, whether it is images or video, these data sets are going to continue to grow and make the data environment much more complex. So what does that mean, right? So for people who are practitioners, for people who are delivering data strategies, people who are trying to advance and effect change in their industries, it really means you're trying to develop systems and platforms that solve for two things. One is, how do you make everybody 10 to 100 times more productive? And second is, how do you avoid being outpaced by the complexities of your data, right? So if unstructured data is going to grow at 200, 500%, how do you be ahead of the curve as opposed to be a victim of that explosion of data? So most companies take a very use case centric approach. So while initially you start seeing value, this process gets super complex. So one good example of looking at it is, you always, in these kind of industries, you always have a plan, right? And a plan is developed with some financial objectives in mind, and you have orders, and you understand your commercials, and then you build the best plan, and then you figure out how to allocate your resources, so then you build another solution for that, and then you figure out how to schedule your assets in the best way possible to go deliver on that plan, and you plan something of how much you're going to buy from your suppliers, and you build something for that. Then you look at your logistics and your supply chain, and you plan how will you get products from point A to point B. As you can see, this gets more and more complex as time goes on. And the reality is what happens over the course of time is everyone has a version of the truth, right? So you will have a truth from your operations, you'll have a truth for your enterprise, you'll have a truth for your supply chain, and that's just the reality of what ends up happening. You have these swamps. And the reality of what happens is there's too many irreconcilable truths, and that lowers trust overall in the enterprise. Second is, in this sort of smorgasbord of an architecture, what ends up happening is high-value signals, those from your product telemetry data. So if you're in the aviation industry, connected aircraft, if you're in automotive, connected vehicles, if you're in energy, the connected assets, those tend to get lower, just more and more siloed, right? And the whole intent of investing in those technologies and connecting those assets is to have them power business operations and have them deliver more predictable businesses. So that's something that actually ends up lowering the predictability of your operations and your business. And last but not the least, in an industry where data volumes are and complexity is 2 to 4 times the size of any other industry, what ends up happening is, because of all of this fragmentation, costs go up exponentially, and fundamentally what that means is that the next project is going to be more costlier than the last one. So that, at the end of the day, fundamentally means that innovation is becoming more cost prohibitive over time. What happens when you can't innovate? You end up losing your competitive advantages. That's what happens. See, it weakens your competitive position in the marketplace, and that's something that is obviously not the use case, not the case that anybody wants. So this kind of an approach just does not hold up in the age of generative AI when you're trying to solve for those two things that I was talking about. Here's the deal, right? More apps, more data, more browser windows is not going to solve this problem. Reality is people fundamentally just want to be able to do their jobs better. And what that means is you've got to change how people interact with systems and documents in this age of generative AI. And what that leads to is much better customer experiences. So let's take a few examples of things in the industry that I'm seeing. How do you deliver more delightful customer experiences? And it could be something as simple in the automotive industry, simplifying the interactions inside the car and outside of it as well. So instead of navigating different online channels of trying to book a service appointment for your vehicle, why don't you just have a natural language prompt do that, right? It's as simple as that. Second is, in industries where field services are super important, how do you deliver a co-pilot that delivers the most effective action as opposed to the current approach, which is to read through dense technical manuals to understand how to troubleshoot a piece of equipment. And last but not the least, operational visibility. This is something that's super critical because every manufacturing customer that I've spoken to in any part of the industry, there is a very true belief that every dollar you put in operational visibility pays for itself multiple times over. But the reality is that most of those applications are consolidated and concentrated in a very small population of users. So with generative AI and large language models in particular, if you flip it on its head and say, how can somebody that is a non-technical user query things like digital twins, query things like control towers, that multiplies exponentially the possibilities of value creation inside the enterprise and really truly democratizes all of those data sets. So fundamentally, this is where the Databricks Lakehouse provides a new operating system for running your data and generative AI operations. And it's really built on 3 principles. One is unifying all of your data, whether it is IT, OT, supply chain, product, doesn't matter. It also provides you a foundation to share these data sets, both internally within the organization and externally with your business partners in a very secure and governed way, which is absolutely critical. And last but not the least, this concept of scale. I think scale is super important from the perspective of what I was talking about earlier, especially in this industry where data volumes and complexity is much higher than anything else. And what I define scale as is it enables you to have a foundation that helps you deliver value to your business units and to your customers faster than you grow costs. And that's the foundation that a Databricks Lakehouse provides you. As a result of all of those things, we are driving immense value creation, and we are very proud of this, is the amount of value that we are going to be creating in this industry over the next 3 years. And we've done a lot of work to get better understanding of the kind of business outcomes that we are driving for our customers. And I'm happy to tell you that we estimate that we'll be impacting over $6 billion of value creation in these industries over the next 3 years, which is an astronomical number. And that's something that we will be unlocking for many of our customers, many of you that are sitting in this room today. And the number of use cases we will be delivering that we see across many different customers is predictive maintenance, whether it's in supply chain visibility, whether it's in customer 360 or yield and quality optimization. Instead of having innovation be cost prohibitive, the approach of unifying, sharing, and scaling will unlock new competitive advantages for many of you that are sitting in the room and many of Databricks customers and prospects and eventually customers that would be coming into the platform as well. So I'm very excited to have you all today here talk about and hear directly from customers who are leveraging the Databricks platform to drive some really cool outcomes in the industry. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Aman Kapoor from Petronas, who will be sharing his story today. Thank you.
Hello. Thanks, Shiv. Hey, guys. Thanks for joining the session. A quick introduction. My name is Aman, and I'm heading the data platform services at Petronas. So my job is to build data and AI solutions and deliver it at scale across the group, right? So let me give a bit of introduction about Petronas. So we have taken a lot of bold steps in the data and AI space, right? So it's kind of, our scale is massive. So we have presence in 100 different markets. And we are like the only Fortune 500 company from Malaysia. That's kind of big, right? And we have like 50,000 people across the group. And so we build and deliver energy solutions in a very responsible and sustainable manner, right? And if you look at our data landscape, and being the virtue of being present in different markets, you can say we have presence across the energy value chain, across upstream, midstream, and downstream, having presence in different markets, business spread across various geographies. So the complexity of our data landscape is massive, right? And you can visualize it through this cube, right? And it's kind of, we have a lot of volume, variety, and veracity, right, to kind of process the data as well. So what we have done actually over the last 2.5 to 3 years, we have kind of embarked on a digital transformation journey to bring more value to our business as well. So we have kind of started with a few strategic enablers. One is, how do we make our organization a bit more agile? Business models needs to be differentiated as we grow and kind of scale as well in different markets. And whenever we do anything, we want to make sure customer centricity and business centricity is always part of every problem solving you do, right? And data and insights becomes super critical when we scale and deliver our experience, especially around productivity improvement, operational efficiency, and finding new differentiating model in the market as well. And lastly, how do we actually embrace new emerging technologies in the business as well to deliver value, right? And data and AI becomes a very important pillar in our transformation journey, right? And as it becomes so critical that we want to become a data-driven organization as well, which means, so we want to raise the data fluency levels for our business, right? So we have 50,000 people, and they're not very fluent because we are actually originally from energy sector, right? And how do we bring new curriculums for our engineers as well to learn data and insights, right? And then we want to make sure we can differentiate our business models by applying data and AI in play as well, right? So we kind of entered into this transformation journey. And when we started, we kind of took a stock of our challenges, right? And these challenges are common across all industries, right? So these are not common for us. I'm sure some of you can relate to these challenges, especially around limited data transparency, right? So visibility of data is very limited across the business as well. So this is a very common problem across the business, right? And accessibility of data. Data is kind of very siloed. So like we are in different 100 markets, how do you bring that visibility of data to our corporate users in a unified manner, right? So these are the problems we started seeing. And then there are no defined data rules, right? Data is pretty new actually as well in our organization, right? We started kind of bringing this to a mainstream over the last 2.5 years, right? So we need to define and redefine our data rules as well. So the quality of data is super critical, right? We talk about LLMs and we talk about Gen AI, but if we don't have high quality data, we don't bring results, right? So the poor quality of data was quite visible across the group as well. Then, so like we are in different markets, so data is kind of siloed, spread across various markets, and unable to generate insights, right? So we need to bring new tools, we need to bring capabilities so that we can use these tools in the right way. So there are a lot of challenges in terms of generating insights as well, because we bring data, but eventually we need to bring insights as well, right? And one critical problem I'm sure everyone will face is about the shortage of skills, right? So the skill set is very, very critical as well. How do we bring and attract the best talent so that we can deliver results? And last but not the least, the cultural challenges are quite visible as well, right? So it's kind of common across enterprises which are as complex as us, right? So we kind of found these are the typical challenges which are kind of in our ecosystem. And then we took a bold steps in kind of taking some strategic initiatives which can take us to a forward path as well. One position we have taken is how do we give a default access to our data? We don't want to keep our data, which is quite siloed, but make sure our data is available to everyone. So this is the golden rule we kind of defined across the group. And we have kind of signed a digital, I would say, group digital liberalization agreement across the group, which means every organization which is part of Petronas would actually liberalize their data so that we can bring that in a common data lake house, and we can deliver insights, right? So that's a kind of a real bold step we have taken. It's not easy to negotiate these agreements with all the OPUs and operating units across the group, right? And then we also talk about how do we actually elevate our data governance approach, because it's quite fragmented, very siloed. There are no actually standards established as well for maintaining high quality data into the ecosystem, right? And one thing which we felt is kind of also missing is like there is no unified data lakehouse which is available for us to bring our siloed data and process it and make sense of it, right? And also one key position we have taken is about identifying the champion use cases, right? So these champion use cases become critical, especially to really speak about these use cases across various forums by the leaders as well, right? And then building the data culture and literacies across the group. So I think data fluency is very, very critical for us as well. We want to make sure our engineers in the plant have access to the data, they can process data, and they can make some meaningful insights, right? And also, behind everything else is our COE, right? So COE is all about our talent, people who are actually bringing the right skill sets to build the tools and technologies to deliver results. So we did this journey in 3 prongs. So we started definitely in the arcade area, I would say, the horizon one, which is all about single domain analytics, right? Which is where we started. Every product, every application has their own analytics, right? Then we shifted into cross-domain analytics, where we start bringing data from various applications in a unified way. And now we are on horizon 3, which is about applying AI and machine learning to deliver results for our business, right? So we are now into this horizon 3, and with this, we kind of pioneered our enterprise data hub, which is to make data available as a service, to also establish platform as a service, and also giving analytics sandbox to our business users, our engineers to deliver AI and machine learning solutions. So this is the typical reference architecture we have in play. So it's our Bible, in a way, which means we have different sources on the left, which gets fed into our large data ecosystem in real time, in batch, in near real time, gets processed into a data lake, which is powered by Databricks and few other tools. You can see there is a transformation piece we are doing using the medallion architecture from Databricks. And then the one cool thing we have done is we have kind of integrated OT and IT data into this ecosystem, right? Which means we brought data from plant information systems, historians, Aviva, Pi. Also, we brought data from SAP. And we have like 30 to 35 petabytes of data, which is fairly large to process. And we can't unlock this without a stable, scalable platform, which is kind of now being built and being deployed as well using Databricks today, right? And then we have also deployed a very a common data governance control tower layer as well, which ensures us we actually curate and validate the quality of data which is being fed into our platform as well, right? And then the last layer to this is the serving layer. We want to make sure all our data, once curated and enriched, gets served to various platforms to deliver results. So we have done integration to about 50 to 55 techno-digital products, which is across our group. So we have like 2,000 plus digital applications, and close to about 50 to 60 applications are powered through this common data hub, right? And then one thing which I've done, I'm sure there are some announcements in the morning about the data marketplace and all that from the lakehouse perspective, but we have also built our own front end. We call it a data plus front end, which also allow us to deliver data assets across the group and also allow us to build the analytics marketplace and powered by a virtual agent. So our agents can actually, our agents or engineers and everyone can actually get access to our data in a click of a button. Right, so that's the serving side of it, and we also we have created an API layer on top of it, so we serve to various platforms in a unified manner. So this is like a reference architecture for us, and I want to talk about 2 specific use cases which we have kind of really nailed it with Databricks, right? So first is about the smart plants. So which I spoke about, how did we bring the OT and IT data together to unify it and process it in almost real time, right? So before Databricks, we were processing these data sets in like 13 minutes. But I think with the introduction of big data engineering capability, we are able to process this in now less than 30 seconds, right? So imagine the kind of reliability we can improve through this experience as well. Our operational engineers would have access to now real-time data to make the right decisions for the reliability of our equipment as well. And that's very, very critical, especially when you come from the energy sector. The health and the safety and environment always take the precedence, right? So that's how we have done in terms of improving speed and the scalability and collaboration. So we have like 120 odd data scientists and data engineers across the group who are building these data and AI products, and to make sure that they can collaborate on a unified platform using Databricks Notebook as a choice of tool to innovate, right? So we have done that through this smart plant deployment. It's kind of done for few operating units, but we need to scale it across the group as well. The second use case I want to talk about is our unstructured data. I think Shiv also talked about the unstructured data, and I can tell you with confidence, 80% of the data in any organization is unstructured. Everyone is talking about structured data sets, data warehouse and all, but we have not spoken about unstructured data sets. And in Petronas, we have taken a bold step to also bring a corpus of unstructured data sets, massage it, and actually make it available to our engineers, right? So that they have access to equipment history, equipment manuals, maintenance records, technical notes. There's so many things they get with the access of this unstructured data, and they can actually make their decisions even more simpler as well. So it's kind of a co-pilot, and we have deployed this for engineering domain, but in future, we are going to deploy this for corporate functions, procurement, finance, anything you talk about. And there's the data corpus in the unstructured space is massive, and you want to unlock that. I just want to touch upon the various, I would say, KPIs, right, which we kind of delivered today through this product. So we have powered like 45 different digital products. I'm sure this list is growing. This is as of a few months back. And we have created a value creation of 80 billion ringgits, but not purely from data perspective, but since we started a digital transformation as a whole. And then we have collected data from historians, about 87 sites. So we have like 250 odd sites across the group. So we have kind of collected data from 87 sites. And we also have built our platform in a multi-tenancy model, so that not every operating unit have to build their own systems, but they can actually use our system as a base to build their own models to analyze the data as well, right? And then on the right-hand side, I have some stats on the Data Plus marketplace, which we have also built and curated internally. So there are about 14,000 active users on the platform who access the data on a day-to-day basis, right? So it's like a marketplace of data, and then they have access to the data as well. Because one principle we kind of defined is default access of data to everyone to innovate, right? And then we also have like massive downloads within the group. It's like 5,000 data set downloads, which are quite regular, and then data sets, models as well. We want to make sure we democratized models across the group as well. So on the same marketplace, we also deploy our models, right? And the quantum of complexity you can measure from that. We have like 400 plus data types, 15 domains, 8 billion plus records, and then about 4,000 plus pipelines, right? So it's kind of massive scale we are operating at, right? I think I spoke about the data fluency piece, right? And for data fluency, we have done some smart partnerships with the likes of Amazon, Microsoft, including Databricks, to bring the right curriculum for our engineers so that they get certified, they can get trained, right? And also, since we are state-owned, we want to make sure we also participate actively in the nation-building agenda. So we also work with the universities to bring the right curriculum as well, so that our students, when they come out of universities, can actually work on data projects as well, right? And we have many other programs at the bottom. I spoke about like Code Without Barriers, so that we can bring more female technocrats, right, to work on our data projects, right? And then We have citizen analytics program across the group, so to make sure we mature the knowledge of our engineers so they know Power BI, they know some basic model development. So we have built this holistic curriculum for our engineers and also universities and students so that we have more people participate actively with our journey as well on the data side. Lastly, we have set up this data and AI COE, and it's kind of supported by multiple COEs as well, whether it's from quality, from metadata, data modeling, right, AI, or data engineering, right? So all these COEs are actually helping us to build the right solutions and data and AI products for the business as well. So it is to help us to shape and orchestrate the data and knowledge vision, safeguard Petronas data assets, deliver enterprise-wide programs on data, and then inculcate data and knowledge-driven culture, right? So these are the underpinned objectives, right? Lastly, we are hiring, and if you guys are interested to join our data journey, please feel free to reach out to us as well. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Aman. All right, thank you, Aman. And I must say that Aman covered really cool things about IT, OT, data convergence, and fundamentally, it's doing data and AI work is a team sport, and people actually have to have hands on keyboard to deliver things. So that's where I think it's a critical part of Petronas' journey is how do you upskill people. So that's really good insights shared by Aman. Now it's, without further ado, it's time for the man, the myth, the legend, Ravuru from JetBlue to walk us through what amazing work they're doing. Sai, come on board.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm going to repeat a lot of the material that you've seen at Keynote today, but I wanted to double-click on some of the things that I didn't have the time to speak about over the course of this presentation. So obviously, thanks for taking the time to join this presentation. One of the things we pride ourselves in at JetBlue is building a cohesive strategy around data and how data is being used. We've got hundreds of use cases across the board, from forecasting the price of oil in the next 12 months, taking macroeconomic conditions into consideration, all the way down to predictive maintenance and cybersecurity and threat intelligence and creating a digital twin solution and so on and so forth. So in order to enable all of these hundreds of use cases that it takes to run an airline efficiently for better customer experience, it is important for us to identify where the commonalities are in the data stack so that you're not creating bespoke solutions for each and every use case and each and every team. So my mandate at JetBlue is to essentially identify where there's common threads where we can tie together and build a team around that in order to enable hundreds of use cases with just one click of a button at the end of the day, or maybe a few lines of code. So that's really where we've started our journey along. And one of the things that I'd like to highlight in this diagram is our data value chain. So right above the leadership data steering and prioritization and the tech stack, you see the entire data value chain that we've illustrated at JetBlue. So we understand that amongst hundreds of use cases, there are going to be use cases or teams, rather, that just need the data to be onboarded. And we also understand that there are teams that just want a business intelligence report. And we know that there are teams that are way past all of that, and they just want an AI and ML model. But we need a team and a tech stack that enables these use cases regardless of where they are. And we'd like to ideally take them through the entire data value chain to the AI and ML portion to upskill, upgrade all of our organizations and teams within JetBlue. So as a part of that, when we start looking at the data value chain, we've structured both the tech stack as well as the teams around the data value chain. So when we gather requirements, say, for a use case, there are three things that we'll look at, and I'm sure Donald Rumsfeld would love this, but there are the known unknowns, right? There are the unknown unknowns, and there are the known knowns. So we want to clearly sit down with our partners when we come up with use cases to really differentiate the differences between the three, because the way we tackle use cases is highly contingent upon which of these areas dominates in each of these use cases. So for example, if there are known knowns, what is the use case? What are you trying to solve? We typically tie together SME support with the work that we're doing in the center of excellence model that we built around the data organization at JetBlue. If there are known unknowns, we typically tie a data scientist together with SME support and start feature engineering in order to develop additional features that may not be available today in our data stack. And lastly, but not the least, unknown unknowns is the really tricky part, because if you've identified all of, let's say, the features or data attributes that you need to solve a use case, there's still that 20%, 30%, 40%, whatever that may be, depending on the use case, which are pure unknown unknowns. You launch a model and you realize the metrics, or the error metrics rather, are total garbage, right? And the noise in the model is contributed by the unknown unknowns. So when we meet with our internal stakeholders, we often try to differentiate between these three, because by developing or inculcating SME support within our organization to transfer that knowledge over into a model building exercise, we're then able to differentiate where noise is added into our AI and ML models in order for a successful implementation, or work with the data integrations and engineering team to onboard the data that we might be missing right from the get-go. So this is how we've structured the team around some of the data value chain propositions, as well as the tech stack itself. In fact, when you look at the teams that we've got, the data integrations, data engineering team, right out of the bat, when we differentiate these three categories, we work with them to onboard the data, or work with the SME teams to onboard some of the things that they might be aware of out there in the field, but it's sitting in a black box or IoT data somewhere, but it's not being structured yet, for example. When it comes to some of the data science efforts, the tactic we've taken is using AI and ML engineers to the max. The way we treat AI and ML engineers at JetBlue is much like a scout or a war. We want to deploy them strategically into use cases such that they're able to get to 20% of the way or 30% of the way by quickly prototyping, and then we hand it off over to the remaining data science teams that are able to deploy it from end to end, including the maintainability of those models. And that has worked brilliantly for us, because we're able to accelerate use cases in a matter of days and hours now, as compared to weeks and months that it used to take. So super excited for how we've been able to try the team itself and the tech stack with the overall data value chain. Now, when it comes to the tech stack, Databricks has been particularly effective for us because it's an integrated solution. It is very easy for us to meet with all of our stakeholders and say, maybe for your particular bespoke use case, you might want to use product A. And then for the next use case, you might want to use product B, et cetera. But if they don't jive well together, you don't have an enterprise data strategy at all. So Databricks has really accelerated our use case, and I like to call it internally the great equalizer. In fact, for the manufacturing sector and the industrial sector in general, we've bypassed digital transformation altogether into now an AI transformation phase. And we want to use it to our advantage, right? So traditionally, ML models, or AI and ML techniques, or some of these ChatGPT technologies, or AI and ML libraries, or auto ML libraries, have always been within the realm of select companies in Silicon Valley. Now, that's being democratized all over the board, and we've got Databricks, really embedding all of these solutions into an integrated platform that enables us to accelerate these use cases end to end. So, in a center of excellence model, we are working closely with our data integrations and data engineering team to build some of these curated data models. What we like to call internally in the medallion architecture world, not just bronze, silver, and gold. These are our super gold models. Trademarked by JetBlue, by the way. In our data science realm, now that we've discussed AI and ML engineers being scouts, when we deploy our data scientists for the remainder of the AI and ML data value addition journey into our data science teams, what then they're able to do is these data scientists, who, by the way, in our organization, a data scientist is a full stack data scientist, so they own the entire lifecycle of a product end to end. And they are embedded into the business units where these use cases are coming out of. So what that gives us is, number one person sees it end to end. It's not an assembly line machine. So they've got great context in terms of what the challenges are for that use case. And number two, because we've identified some of the challenges in the use cases, some of the common patterns, we work closely with the AI and ML engineers to create a common set of libraries that anybody is able to use. Like I mentioned, we've got hundreds of use cases across the board. I don't want to hire hundreds of data scientists just to meet all of these use cases. So what we end up doing is when we deploy assets or resources into some of these teams and use cases, we identify are these modeling techniques or are these approaches built into some of our common libraries? If they're not, let's work with the AI and ML engineers and embed that into our common library. Say, for example, we're trying to launch a chatbot. And productionalization of chatbot is not available in our internal built library called BlueML, which rapidly allows you to auto-ML and auto-deploy and auto-monitor some of these models. When we're working in a use case as such, we try to tease out what are some of the common elements in that use case so that we can embed some of those LLM ops technologies directly into BlueML. So the next time around we have a use case around chatbots, we've got a ready-made chatbot factory built into some of our common libraries. So this is how we're able to accelerate deployment at JetBlue with a limited skeleton crew. But having said that, we've got executive buy-in. So we're growing pretty aggressively at JetBlue. Another thing that I'd like to highlight is our tech stack. So naturally, airlines, we are beholders of a ton of external data. We've got data from, let's say, NASA around the airspace, and that's coming in milliseconds. We've got data from some of our tech ops folks working with some of the partners right here in this room in order to onboard the data, such as Airbus, Adobe, for our customer web analytics, and so on and so forth. All of that is pretty typical and standard for any airline or transportation or industrial sector in terms of external data onboarding. Now, 2 years ago at JetBlue, the whole right-hand side of the stack did not exist. So today, we have 10 bespoke products that are deployed with a team of just 20 folks. And over the last 2 years, we started down a lakehouse journey and built all of the right-hand side of the stack from scratch, including our native internal libraries called BlueML. So by adding technology as well as resources around the data value chain and identifying commonalities and taking the time to pause and embed those commonalities into libraries and tools and platforms that other folks are able to use really accelerates the go-to-market efficiency for all the products on the whole right-hand of the side of the stack. So it's been a real boon for us in terms of how we've structured the team as well as technologies. So one of the examples that I'd like to highlight is the Blue Sky tool that we built. It's a digital twin simulator that we built for our operations. It takes into consideration hundreds and hundreds of attributes about the state of our customers, the state of our aircraft, the state of the air traffic conditions, and so on and so forth. Being based out in the New York City area, we are in the busiest airspace in the world. So our flights don't necessarily affect us. It is everybody else that affects us. A competitor, let's say, having trouble landing and having a rejected takeoff or a rejected landing, for example, affects us because now we have to wait in a holding pattern around the airport. So we've got to take that into consideration and compute the impact to our network live in real time. And once we do that, we're able to essentially ship it back to the decision makers to say, well, now that we've got the data structured, we've got the network built out, let's make sure that we build a simulator around it. So we built a simulator for our frontline folks to better understand what the impact of a single minute delay is on all 1,000 flights that run for today and another 1,000 flights that run for tomorrow. But not only that, because we sell the schedule out for the next 9 months, you can book your tickets today on JetBlue for the next 9 months. We take that into consideration for adjusting the next 9 months of schedule as well. What is a really good aircraft to put on a flying line that is high utilization so that it has a very low probability of potentially experiencing a maintenance issue? Or how do we allocate maybe aircraft to spare lines so that they're available at strategic places where parts and inventory is not available so that we can essentially use these aircraft for a lot of the flying lines? So one of the things we built at JetBlue is a digital twin in a layered approach using some of the data value chain additions. So think, for example, at the very center of the circle, we built the foundational blue sky digital twin, where using all of the roles and the interactions that with the Blue Sky core product, we're able to use natural language processing and LLM technologies to essentially now unlock new use cases. Not only are you able to simulate from a maintenance perspective, but you can also simulate fuel efficiency programs. Every minute that an aircraft is waiting at the gate because the gate is already occupied because we haven't done our due diligence to essentially allocate the gate space properly, is burning 40 pounds of fuel per engine. So obviously there is as a being big in the ESG space, we like to essentially take care of fuel efficiency algorithms and make sure that all of the digital twin recommendations that we're giving also caters to some of the fuel efficiency algorithms. Call center, letting customers know ahead of time, don't show up for your airport because the last flight of the day might be canceled, or we're going to be delaying your flight, up to 24 to 48 hours prior by a few minutes. So you might want to show up to the airport, a few minutes late or something like that, right? So omni-channel distribution of all of these insights to the customers so they can have a better customer experience as well, or rebook them without them even noticing. So customer loyalty is a huge portion of that, as well as risk simulations ahead of time for the next 9 months of schedule, and most importantly, process improvement and change management. At the end of the day, when we build a digital twin solution, we want to learn from some of the trends and behavior for the users that are interacting with our digital twin solution. So we want to pump all of these insights out to LLM technologies, because the #1 blocker to any successful product implementation, especially in a company as large as us with 25,000 folks and 10,000 being on the front lines, is change management. How are we going to train people to use the digital twin solution? How do we embed this curriculum into ready-made, let's say, slides that they have to finish at the end of the workday and so on and so forth? So instead of going through that entire change management pattern, we look at the LLM technology as a replacement to all of that, and also a mechanism through which we can collect feedback immediately. The thumbs up and thumbs down, that's feedback for us in terms of product management and product improvement. So we embed all of this into the LLMs, and we're able to launch very, very intuitive platforms, such as Blue Sky, that is able to look at alerting mechanisms and so on and so forth. So I've been told I'm over time, but I'll leave with one last note. When we build chatbot technologies, we totally understand the concept of LLM ops and data governance and so on and so forth. So we actually have worked with our OpenAI partners to create an embedding layer to download all of the embeddings, beyond which we built a prompt engineering layer that is a closed loop solution that will allow us to essentially use any of the online assets to give insights through the LLMs. So on that note, we are going down a very, very fast and accelerated journey. If you're interested in joining us, please let us know.
Thanks, man. That was great. Thank you. All right, Zai, you're an absolute rock star. I can see why you won the Disruptor Award. You and your team are doing some really cool things. So sticking with the theme of the day right now with aviation, we have Seth Babcock from Collins Aerospace, who will be talking through their journey with the platform and what amazing outcomes they're driving to deliver better outcomes in aviation. So over to you, Seth.
Thanks, Shiv. All right, so really good segue from Sai over to what we are doing here at Collins Aerospace. So let me jump in to this. So Seth Babcock, I head up our tech ops. So Sai did an awesome job, I think, of explaining how an airline is trying to bring all the many, many pieces of an airline together to really kind of connect all the data aspects to really run a really good operation. So at Collins, we've really tried to take on a whole digital, really kind of group to really go and assist airlines of going really, really, really deep in a certain domain. So I head up all of our tech ops solutions and analytics in our connected aviation solutions. So a little bit about Collins. So we are part of RTX. RTX is Raytheon Technologies, Pratt & Whitney Aircraft Engines, and then Collins Aerospace. This is a quick overview of Collins. So we have 6 different strategic business units. So a good analogy that I think we like to throw out a lot of times is we make pretty much everything except for the structure of the airplane, right? From the air management systems to the engines, to the interiors, to the landing gears, to the brakes, all of that is Collins Aerospace. And so we have a deep domain in just really kind of systems engineering and building a lot of these products, right? And so it makes it a really good vertical for us to really start to play in this digital space. So I'm part of the connected aviations space, headquartered out of Annapolis, and this is a good kind of very 40,000 foot view of really kind of what we're doing. So we have solutions in the connected aviation solution space that really touch the entire passenger journey throughout their entire flight. So we have check-in systems, all the kiosks typically that you see at the airport are all Collins. We manage the entire air-to-ground and ground-to-ground networks throughout the entire space. And then really kind of getting into the maintenance piece, right? We're an OEM of these large systems, and so we are developing really kind of complex machine learning algorithms out of that. So in that space, we have a tool that we're using called Essentia, which is really diving deep into the predictive maintenance space. On the Essentia solution that we have today, we're really have over 70 different customers that are on Essentia, and we're monitoring about 3,500 aircraft. So that's all the way from like APU health analytics into full predictive maintenance on an entire aircraft. All of this then is how do we take telemetry data off the aircraft. All that data comes off in a very binary flat file form. So we have to have a lot of engineering process that goes into adding engineering units to that entire thing, and then really kind of flowing it into a lot of our ML approaches to that. So today we have 15 data scientists. I think a lot of you guys may have sat in Sankit's presentation yesterday where he really kind of dove deep into some of that. We have a whole software engineering team. And then really the data engineering piece is such a huge aspect of what we do. Our solution exists by airlines sharing data with us, right? So we want to be very, really kind of agnostic to how their data is coming in, right? Which means we have to have multiple solutions and a really good understanding of what to do with that data to structure it and to get it into standard forms. So the data engineering piece is a big piece of it. Additionally, we really have to, for our product to be successful, we really have to go and look at the digital maturity of all airlines out there, right? Not every airline out there is as advanced as JetBlue is. And so we have to really kind of figure out how do we help them along that journey. So we have a whole kind of fleet monitoring team. So we would take on predictive maintenance for them as a service, as well as really kind of giving them the tool, as is, if they want to go and manage that themselves. So today, we are all on Azure, and Databricks is a huge piece of that. I have Snowflake up there, which I know is maybe a bit contentious for this. But at the same time, though, this goes back to the complexity of, I think, a lot of our customers. There's a good number of them that are using Snowflake, so we have to have some ability to have them share data. As soon as we get it into our systems, goes from Snowflake over into Databricks, and then Databricks is where we're doing all of our deep ML and delta tables and so on and so forth. So we are then using Power BI is fully embedded into the application. So we have a whole series of Delta tables that are feeding Power BI instances of the airline's data back to them. And then we're also using Plotly. So Power BI, fantastic tool to go build dashboarding type things. But as you get into 1 Hertz, full flight data, it really is not the best tool to use. So we've really kind of been on a really cool process with Plotly to really kind of bring them in, and that's where we're using those tools to embed directly into the application for full time series visualization in there. So we had a acquisition about a year and a half ago. So most of you guys are probably fully aware of FlightAware. Fantastic tool to understand the status of an aircraft. And so we are leveraging the FlightAware data in many different ways. We get all kinds of on-ground taxi type information there, so predictive taxi, predictive departures, arrivals to the gate. And we're even using it in things of like trying to understand how an aircraft is leveraging brakes, right? We see acceleration, deceleration, and can then assume brakes are being applied, which are really kind of then feeding kind of remaining useful life brake wear things there. So we're really trying to advance well beyond just the standard data sets that we have today. And then we're using, or today we have about 300 terabytes of customer data. All right, so really today, just to give you a last slide snapshot here. So today we've really kind of been on a pretty good journey here from a data perspective. If we go back to 2018, we are a historic, like deep engineering company, right? And so as most of you guys know, most engineers love MATLAB. Right, and that's what they learned in school, and that's what they want to go and use, right? And I can attest to that, absolutely. Fantastic tool, it just doesn't scale, right? And I know Databricks is actually doing some cool things with MATLAB to really kind of bring some different things in there, so that's exciting. But really where we started in 2018, we were doing a lot of the predictive stuff all on engineers and data science local machines using MATLAB. And we quickly found out we just could not scale, and we needed to really kind of get into the cloud. At that point is when Databricks really kind of leaned in to the relationship on the Collins side, and we immediately went into Databricks from there. And then that has really kind of transgressed into MLflow and a handful of different tools. Our biggest thing today is we still rely heavily on SFTP to transfer data back and forth to an airline. That is my mission as a product owner in this space, to eliminate that. And we have had some awesome conversations with Databricks around Delta Share. We really see this, there's a lot of airlines that are even coming to us saying, hey, we want APIs to feed this data back. We really almost want to leapfrog the API conversation and jump directly into the Delta Share side. So we're super excited about that. I think that allows us to share data on scale tremendously. Unity Catalog is crucial, I think, to where we're headed. At the end of the day, we are firm believers that the data that is given to us to analyze and provide value to is the airlines. So we have a high degree of just trust that we have to earn from the airlines, and part of that is data governance. Unity Catalog allows us to take contractual obligations that we have with the customer and then really have good audit processes all the way through to make sure that we are handling their data with the best we can do there. As we get into the customer engagement piece, this is another really cool area where I think we're seeing some really neat potential partnership as we move forward. Probably the biggest one here is clean rooms. So today, as a predictive maintenance kind of application that is serving a lot of different airlines in the space today, we know that we need to enable them to go and really kind of enhance their journey. Part of that is how do we give them the ability to go create their own predictive models, right, and then flow them directly into our application. Clean rooms is really, I think, the next step that we really see to be able to segregate IP, right? Their IP lives, in their domain space, and so on for ours. But they can really kind of go and do advanced ML analytics in there and then flow those alerts directly back into our application. So still definitely a long journey as we go through that. But really, as we evaluate, I think, all of the different kind of technology sectors out there today and how we continue to enhance on our product, Databricks definitely starts to fit the needs in tremendous ways. So, all right, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Seth. Thank you so much. Give it up for Seth Babcock and Collins Aerospace. All right, so our last but not least lightning talk here is by Bart Kreider from Corning. So let's give him a warm welcome. Let's go.
All right, it's always good to be last, right? You see everybody walking out the door. So I am Bart Kreider. I run the data office at Corning. What that comprises of, I've got responsibility, or my team does, for kind of all of our enterprise data platforms. We deliver data solutions to the business, have responsibility for data governance, enterprise data architecture, and data enablement. How do we actually teach the employees of Corning how to use data? Now, most of you may or may not be familiar with Corning. A lot of people, when they hear the word Corning, they think Corning ware, right? Everybody probably has some in their kitchen, right? But we do a whole lot of other cooler stuff with glass, right? Most of your smartphones in your hands, that's our screens. If you got a TV at home, that's probably our display. Right? If you're using the internet over at the hotel you're staying in, you're probably using our fiber, right? We've figured out some amazing things to do with glass. So to give a little bit of the history of the company, we've been around for 170 years. We made the glass for the first light bulb. May not have known that, right? And our specialty is really expertise in material science, right? Specifically around glass science, optical physics, and ceramic science. We are headquartered in upstate New York, beautiful Corning, New York. We've got about 60,000 employees, and last year did about $50 billion in sales, right? And really, from a mission perspective, we want to use innovation in material science to make the world better, right? Either through the ceramic substrates that clean the air coming off of the big rigs, how we communicate over fiber and the internet, or even just with entertainment, with your phones and your tablets and your TVs. But when we tell our story about a business, we kind of have a framework that we use called the 3-4-5 to kind of give you a little bit of a deep dive into kind of what Corning looks like. So we have 3 core technologies, right? Glass science, ceramic science, and optical physics. Those support 4 manufacturing and engineering platforms around vapor disposition, fusion, precision forming, extrusion, and those get aligned to 5 market access platforms that support our optical communications business, mobile consumer electronics, display, automotive, and life sciences. Now, the power of Corning is we actually allocate 80% of our resources to the synergies in these 3 pillars. And we put 80% on things that hit multiple pillars. That helps us improve our probability of success, reduce the cost of innovation, improve operational efficiency, and make the barrier to entry much higher for our competitors. But what that also frees up is then to take 20% of those resources and put them on a single capability. Now, the bar is much higher for that because of the probability of success, but that's where we help do and drive our innovation. Now, to share a little bit about kind of our data journey, if you've been in the data business like I have for a while, last 30, 40 years, we've kind of gone through 4 major phases. Everybody remembers the data marts of the 90s. We got tired of those, they didn't scale. We went over to the enterprise data warehouses in the 2000s, and then everybody got in love with an elephant in 2010, and everybody rushed over there, and now we're at the kind of cloud computing. The challenge that we faced at Corning, we never left phase 1. So I'm sitting on 400 siloed data repositories out in our enterprise. At one point in the company, we had 1 billion Excel files, right? So if you think about trying to enable the current generation of data and analytics from a self-service data exploration or driving insights or data science, huge problem, right? And especially if you think about the last 3 years for a manufacturing company, been really, really hard, let alone the pandemic, right? But we had these chip shortages, right? And then we had decreased manufacturing output. We couldn't find any people because everybody left, right? Now we've got supply chain shortages and prices are going up. And we sat there and realized, like, look, 400 data silos is not going to solve this problem, right? We've got to do something different. If we're going to navigate this very complex macroeconomic environment, we've got to do something different, and we've got to be able to rely on data. And that's where our data journey began to say, we've got to go do something different, and we don't have a platform to do it on. And that created our relationship with Databricks. So we created an enterprise data platform that we call Kairos. It is anchored on Databricks, very familiar medallion architecture that most of you are used to seeing. And the two big challenges that we had when we started this was it was really, really hard to get data out of our source systems in many cases, and obviously it was not all in one place. So we leveraged the Databricks and Qlik partnership with Qlik Data Integration, where we've connected it up to a lot of our back office systems like SAP and PeopleSoft to replicate data near real time into Databricks. Also for some of the unstructured stuff, we use DataSync. And then we have a variety of data engineering teams that take the data from there and curate it into silver and produce the output from gold. And that's driven a variety of different use cases from machine learning, vision you may have seen we used in our environmental technologies business, inventory management, et cetera. But one of the things that was important to us as we went on this journey is we didn't want to take this, build it, and they will come. That's kind of risky, and a lot of things fail that way. We really wanted to be sure that we tied anything we brought into Databricks to a tangible business outcome and a value proposition, or else we weren't even going to start. And so we developed this kind of phased approach of how we would go about doing that. We wanted to start with what we called a POV. Hey, using data and analytics in this way for Corning was a little bit new. So let us prove the value to you by having a short 3-month, get a snapshot of the data, focused agile team, and we'll prove the value, right? Some cases it may work, some cases it may not. But if it does, then we're going to look to how we scale that pattern. And we wanted to build reusable patterns along the way that could be applied to other parts of the business. So if something moves into phase 2, we would harden it. We might take it to additional lines. And then in phase 3, we would scale it up. Where can we take what we've just built and apply it to a different part of the business, right? Reusability, scalability was really critical for us. And this gave us a very quick path to success to get people on board to generate momentum and say, oh, wow, this does tell me something about my data I never knew before. Let's keep going. And so over the course of the last several years, we've enabled a variety of capabilities on top of Databricks. We've got image and recognition that we use in our environmental technology division, where we had a lot of false positives as they were looking at the quality inspection. From dust, we've figured out how to use image detection to say that one's actually okay, you don't need to do any manual efforts around it. For the first time in the company's history, we have an enterprise view of inventory. Kind of surprising, but that's what happens when we have 400 data silos. And when cash flow is so critical this day and age, that was crucial to the company being able to manage its overall inventory amounts, figure out what the one division had that another division might be able to use, which we've never had before, and really manage our overall cash flow. And we continue to kind of execute that model, looking for those POVs and those use cases as we build out capabilities on top of Databricks. So that's kind of been our journey. I know I hustled a bit, I know we're behind time, but I guess it's panel time.
Thanks, Bart. Thank you so much, Bart. We're going into a little bit of a panel here, interactive. I know we're short on time, but let's get chairs on the stage so that we can welcome all our speakers back, please. Aman, Seth, and Sai. And Bart, you're already there. Getting it in the act.
Oh, there, at front, okay.
Yeah, you got the front.
Did you want to slide?
All right, I'm going to jump on here.
Yeah, I'll get
and audience, better prepare your questions, because I'm going to throw it to you in just about a minute. All right, so first of all, thanks again for making the time and just fantastic presentations by all of you, sharing your stories and what you're doing. I'm sorry, I didn't want to sit down, so I'm just going to stand here and stare at you. So yeah, anyway, so we'll get started here. So I think one of the things, some of you talked about this, is this large language models. With this theme of the conference is Generation AI. So I've got to ask, like from a large language models perspective, I think it's safe to say that it's kind of the iPhone moment. Let's just agree on that and let's just move on from that. But one of the questions that I would have is, what do you think will separate the winners and the losers when it comes to realizing value from this new technology? How do you guys view that problem? So perhaps we could start with Seth and get all of your views as well.
Yeah. I think and I think Ali kind of mentioned it today. As you get into the LLM space, I think who is able to kind of be the first incumbent to take their data and start to infuse and tweak those LLMs really starts to be a true differentiator, right? Especially like in the aerospace side, there is so much like jargon related to an airline, right? There's abbreviations for abbreviations, right? And so how you go and leverage large amounts of data in the aerospace side to really help advance those LLMs really starts to become a true differentiator, right? And I think that is going to be a huge key, in addition to really the ecosystem that starts to handle the LLMs, right? Tremendous technology, right? But how do you implement tremendous technology and handle the change management aspect of it, right? So that's going to be the big thing, is who can wrap the best application around it, I think, too, to limit and get advanced adoption to limit change management.
Fantastic. Others?
Yeah, I think rushing in without having the appropriate governance, one of the first things we did was put a policy in place at the company, right? Because we wanted to be sure it's in compliance with code of conduct, right? We weren't putting copyright information in there, right? And so, I think having that appropriate governance to be sure that, you're using it in the right way, right, is also going to be critical, right? Because, a loser could be someone that gets a false, usage of it, and then
ends
they
up on the front page of the newspaper.
Front page of the newspaper, right? And then another target.
Yeah, we heard a story like that, right, recently? Other thoughts? I mean, from a large language models perspective, like it is disruptive in its ability to unlock productivity in users, like I was describing before, and many of you talked about as well. But I'm sure you had a pretty full plate of projects that were already running in AI, ML, data engineering. Like, how has that impacted your portfolio of projects? Like, suddenly you see ChatGPT happens, and then every CEO is calling you about generative AI and like calling upon your teams. How are you running your teams right now with all this hype around generative AI? How do you actually run your teams? Like, how has that impacted? How has this movement impacted you? So maybe Sai, we could start with you and go down the horn.
Sure. So I think it's a great question, by the way. One of the ways we've sort of approached this, and I think we've honestly been lucky. I talked a little bit about the AI and ML engineers being scouts, for example. We were prepared. So we had an entire AI and ML team just focused on forward-looking technologies. So when LLM moment happened, we were ready to onboard those technologies into our entire ecosystem. And one more thing I'll touch on is, and this is super underrated, the reason why ChatGPT is as good as it is today is because all of us are essentially crowdsourced and we're improving the model. So having a good prompt engineering layer within your organization with what I like to call the thumbs up or thumbs down, first of all, crowdsources the improvement of the models to the rest of the organization. And number two, gives ownership of the entire development process to the rest of the folks that are not part of this technology. So for us, it's been a real boon in terms of democratizing LLM technologies across the entire board.
That's a great point. While you were saying this, I was thinking, has it also made like some of these newer things, we saw a lot of like co-pilot kind of things, is this also making your existing teams productive, or is that just hype that we hear?
I think I may, so I think Copilot is kind of giving us a bit of confidence in terms of realistic use cases. right? So like GitHub Copilot is one specific example. We're kind of testing it on a small scale, right? And we're also deploying some low-hanging fruits as well in terms of knowledge mining, right? So we want to make sure how it can impact our ecosystem and help us to kind of, embrace this technology, hands-on on the ground, right? So I think there's a lot of realistic outcomes we can deliver by deploying LLM, and we are still debating in terms of whether we should go for proprietary models, whether we should go for foundational-based model, which is a bit more open, but I think we are trying to do experiments at this stage, and hopefully with the introduction of new services you guys announced today, we can actually test some of these services at scale and then validate and kind of bring these outcomes to our business as well, right? So that's the plan.
Fantastic. So one of the things I have to ask is if half of this panel is from aviation, so I've got to ask, like, how has the pandemic sort of changed customer expectations in air travel, right? Like, because it's kind of an interesting point where ChatGPT happened and the aviation industry is still recovering. And is it, with the pandemic sort of no longer putting any disproportionate impact on travel, what are some of the new opportunities that you guys are seeing in the industry? Or, or maybe it's business as usual coming back. What are you guys seeing? Seth and Sai perhaps can start us off.
Yeah. I think it was a huge shock to kind of the airline industry. I was at the airlines for the start of the pandemic, and I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, oh, this is going to blow over, don't worry about it, and then boom, like 3 weeks later, massive change. So I think it really has, changed the way airlines are, right? There's a huge, I think, turnover of personnel at airlines through that, right? And a lot of domain expertise is not there anymore. So this has really, caused them to have to be more data driven, right? And they've had to really find different ways to cope with a loss of domain expertise in there. So I think as we come out of this, right, it is definitely feels like more business as usual pre-pandemic. But I think there is a massive change, I think, in a technology focus from an airline perspective. I mean, predictive maintenance at the airline level pre-pandemic was very soft. There was only, I would say a handful of airlines really leaning forward into that. Coming out, vastly different from that perspective.
I guess we would look at it as an opportunity. When business started to scale down, for example, during the COVID environment, we were forced to think about what our competitive advantage was in the industry. And we realized that coming out of the pandemic in this post-pandemic environment, I guess we're all sitting together, so it is post-pandemic, we realized that, in the aviation sector, as we spooled up the business back up, in the post-COVID environment, the traditional approach in aviation has been to throw bodies at the problem. I think in most industrial sectors, it is to just throw bodies at the problem in terms of resources, skills, and so on and so forth. But the perfect confluence of skill shortage and this post-pandemic environment has forced us to rethink how do we deploy AI and ML in such a way that it addresses the whole notion of throwing bodies at the problem. Instead, you've got exponential scalability, as you scale up using just core AI and ML technology. So I think for us, it has been an immense opportunity, and that's been recognized at the board and C-suite level at JetBlue as well.
Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. The industry is obviously going through a lot of things at the same time, to your point, and it's exciting to watch the role of data analytics and AI in shaping some of those things. So I'm going to ask a question, and I'm going to throw it over to the audience after this. It's probably my last one. So all of your industries, by the way, like one thing is common. I know it looks very different on surface, but when you kind of like just peel the onion layers a little bit, one of the things that I see is you all operate in industries that are super high competitive intensity and or highly sensitive on intellectual property. Is that fair in some ways, right? So how do you, in that environment, I think one of the things that a couple of you mentioned was, how do we share data with your business partners? Then they could take supply chain, you could take customers. What's the current state of data sharing in your respective industries? And where do you see that going in the next 3 years? And maybe we can start with Aman.
Yeah, I think especially because we are across the entire value chain, integrated value chain in energy sector, and we have a retail arm as well. So there's a large customer data set which exists in our ecosystem, and we want to amplify our customer experience as well by analyzing that data and also bringing some other data sets from outside so that we have a better understanding of our customers as well, which are customers for other organizations within the region, right? So I think we are still kind of doing very initial pilots to bring this B2B data sets across the board as well and see how can we run a bit more targeted campaigns for our retail customers, right? And then bring value on both the sides, and organization who want to kind of pool in data. So I would say it's very targeted, small scale approach at this stage, but I think in future we would definitely want to leverage data sharing and all of the technologies which will come into play and get more matured so that people who are having common foundation, common platforms can exchange data and amplify the data sets for more targeted campaigns as well. So that's one area I think we'll leverage a lot in terms of bringing our data sets together from organizations, yeah.
So airline industry, you guys should be sharing data. Yeah. How's that working out?
Well, I touched on it a little bit. It's from the airline's perspective, for instance, Collins is one of many vendors, right? Or people, suppliers to the airline, right? And so sharing data from an airline perspective is extremely challenging, right? I think the more that we can leverage around technology like Delta Share, and then get into clean rooms and get into those types of things, right? We, exponentially can start to solve problems faster, cheaper, right? And be able to scale at a industry level opposed to siloed from supplier to airline A to airline B, so on and so forth. So I think there's, if you look at the aviation industry, right, there's a saying out there that, we differentiate in the markets and the places we fly, but we always are first to collaborate on safety, right? And so collaboration of safety is such a deep theme throughout the aviation industry that everyone is always sharing, right? So all kinds of different ways to, I think, continue to make aircraft more safe and reliable. And I think, Delta Share is what an awesome, I think, technology to kind of go and start doing that.
100%. I think traditionally the industry has been siloed in terms of data sharing capabilities. In fact, a quick anecdote, I just recently talked to a business partner who was asking us what use case would you like to use the data for and charging us per contract for per use case. I said, no, that's not going to work in this day and age. So I think we still have a ways to go in terms of opening up these silos and democratizing data across the board. But having said that, I think Seth is absolutely right. There is precedence in this domain where airlines were one of the first few to share data openly with each other for safety reasons because it is a modern engineering marvel. So from that regard, we have done it before, and I'd like to see more partners in the industry sharing data with each other through Delta sharing capabilities, for example, or even selling and making models open source for that matter. Because at the end of the day, if one airline improves or one partner improves in this industry, I think it brings the water up and really rising tide lifts all ships in a sense.
Also, Bart, any thoughts on data sharing?
Yeah, I think one of the things that the pull creates is you can't share data if you don't collect the data, right? And in some manufacturing systems, you deal with lots, and people are like, I don't want to know the lots. I want to know what about that particular sheet of glass, right? And we may not or may not be collecting that information, right? So I think that's also created a pull within our processes to say, we actually probably need to be capturing more information than we have been if we're actually going to be able to use it and to be able to share it. Right? And then at the same time, I think you're right, depending upon the culture of the company, becoming more open to sharing that is also a big change management exercise when you're used to saying, oh, I got to keep it all under lock and key.
Yeah. So the technology is there, but it needs to be complemented with this journey of being more open as a business.
Yep.
All right. Fantastic. All right. So we probably have time for maybe 2 questions. And Sam, if you would be so nice. to pick a few. Let's see. So we'll start with the gentleman in the front row.
Hi there. Just on this whole theme of data sharing, right? Aman, you mentioned something really interesting. You mentioned that the culture of the company had changed to essentially making data sharing a default, right, for most groups. So I'm really interested about, what is it about your culture, right, of the culture of the company or the transformation that you affected that permitted you to go from what you're talking about, like the whole siloing, my data is mine, to a place where, sharing was enabled by default?
Well, I think there's two pieces of it. I think one, the market started to drive it, right? Our divisions had been allowed to operate somewhat independently, and then all of a sudden we saw with the pandemic or macroeconomic shifts, we needed to look at stuff corporately, and we didn't have the information, right? And so that created, even just inside of the company, this openness to say, hey, look, if we're going to get inventory levels down, we got to you guys all got to share with each other so we can know that somebody already has a part at this site that may need it. I think the other piece really is having to go through an intense amount of security rigor to be sure people were comfortable the appropriate policies and controls were in place before we were going to go share it out. And a lot of times that's just working through the practices that you have to get people comfortable. And if you kind of take it one step at a time, then that change is a little bit easier to overcome.
Thanks.
I think there's one back there.
One over there in the back, Sam.
Ooh, hello. Okay, hi.
Oh, there you go.
So actually my question is really similar to the one up front, to Bart and then Seth. I'm at Collins too, but I don't have the benefit of commercial, unfortunately. But I was really interested when you were talking about those proof of value, so you said things that both worked and didn't work. I mean, obviously if something works, you want to expand it through the company, but how did you work through those solutions that maybe didn't work? And how did you prove to people, okay, this is just an experiment? How did you change the culture there and still allowing innovation and kind of allowing people to fail?
Yeah, I mean, we started with not the expectation that every proof of value or hypothesis to use data and analytics to solve a problem was actually going to work, right? And we wanted to learn from it, right? So we were very open with that up front, and it was one of the reasons in our journey we didn't ask them to pay for the experiment, right? That's why we kept it short, so we weren't forking out a bunch of dollars. So look, we'll partner with you to prove it out. If we prove it out and we prove value, then you got to carry it and fund it the rest of the way. But we've given you the impetus to say, yes, there is value here. But in some cases, we ran in a lot of situations where we started and they're like, the data's crap, right? I can't solve the problem. And that sent them off to go fix their data before they had to come back again.
Is that experience pretty similar across the board for all of you? Or did you guys take different approaches to
Absolutely. I think we ran into a handful of problems where we would get weeks into a solution and find out, oh, the data that we actually need is not available, right? So like iterative process to change processes on the front end of how can we be smarter around data evaluation on the front end so that we are more successful on outputs coming out.
Fantastic. Next question. We'll take one more. You get your pick.
Question, are much of you doing things with edge computing, right, where the sensors are streaming in the data from the machines and then analyzing that, doing predictive maintenance or things with manufacturing or various other use cases?
We are a lot. I was actually at a conference here a couple of weeks ago. We have a whole series of kind of connected products, sensors that we're putting on like coffee makers on an airplane. And then how do we hook up directly to cabin SATCOM and stream those off, real-time data to build analytics. If you look at the aircraft, it's very difficult to like go and record data amongst all the different systems, right? You're getting roughly anywhere from 2 to maybe 5,000 parameters off an airplane. However, there's roughly 30 to 40,000 kind of streaming through an airplane today. So huge thing that we're working. We have an aircraft interface device as well too that we've invested a lot of money in to really kind of go and enable airlines to really kind of expand on a lot of that. So that is a huge part of our ecosystem.
Yeah, and the quality inspection use case I mentioned, we actually build the model in Databricks off of tons of images, and then we publish it back out to the plant to where it's actually in the manufacturing process and being used at that point in time to say, no, this one's good, you can send it on.
And I think even in the oil and gas side, we have some aging fields as well, so which doesn't support any data to be federated back to our ecosystem. So we deploy some low cost, still safe, and safety is important for us, but IoT sensors and all to collect some parameters like temperature and vibrations and some images, right? So that we can process it through IoT gateway as well at our backend, right? So, and then some of the computing can be done at the edge level, especially where we can't enable the connectivity to the cloud and all, right? So plenty of use cases we are doing in terms of deploying some IoT sensors and then kind of collect the data and then process at the edge or the cloud depending on the situation on the ground as well.
I'd say maybe I'd end that question with, we do gather a ton of data from our aircraft sensors today, and we are working with partners to make sure that we have that data available in real-time streaming fashion into our digital twin solutions, et cetera. One of the challenges that we frequently face when it comes to such data is edge computing is impossible at 35,000 feet. So you always want to essentially download the data back to the ground where you've got the computational power available, where you can compute that rather than having to compute on the device itself. So IoT sensor data is a huge sort of a revelation in the industrial sector, and I think it's still got ways to go in terms of where the computing is distributed in terms of edge versus on the ground, at least in our world.
Yeah, so this is a fascinating question, so thank you for asking it, because edge and cloud has always been this, where do you apply which and in what capacity? So I think it's all fantastic discussion. So I think that's all we have time for right now. Obviously, we'll have a happy hour right after, so please feel free to come up and interact with the speakers, with myself and the Databricks team here. But I just wanted to say thank you so much to all our fantastic speakers. Let's give them a big round of applause. They've done a fantastic job. All right, let's drink up, everybody. Let's go.
For those of you who are able to stay, if you go down the hallway, there's going to be a happy hour. We're going to join forces with communications, media, and entertainment and network with each other. Have fun.